Oops, I opened the wrong room here. Okay, I think I did open the wrong room here, but I don't think it should matter too much. I think everybody knows to come into this room. While we're in here, happy Sunday, everybody. Hope you had a wonderful weekend. Welcome to the live Q&A that I host here on Sunday. Welcome, Charlie. Yes, every Sunday at 5 p.m. I go live and I generally answer questions as they relate to the VWAP Wave System. Simple questions, advanced questions, whatever anybody has. Happy to address it here, help provide clarity, help people through any issues they might be struggling with. So I generally will talk about Friday's action a little bit, but let people stream into the room here a little bit. We were trading NQ on Friday. And who remembers this setup? This was by far probably one of the better setups of the morning. What setup does that look like, guys? I'll even give you the session profile. This is what it looked like at the time. This was a textbook PDC short. What do we have in Confluence? We had a composite low volume node. We had a distribution forming, the largest distribution of the day. And this was the value area high. And not only that, but if we zoom out, earlier morning's support has become resistance. And this wound up being a beautiful PDC on Friday. Played out with very little hit, very little heat right to the IB low, of which we got the Madonna. And this Madonna, for anybody that took it, again, very little heat. You would have taken 9 points of heat and taken that Madonna if you just took it on first touch. Okay. All right. Hey, everybody. Happy Sunday. I was actually, I didn't realize I wasn't speaking. Should have sound. Sound. Does anybody not have sound? Looks to me like it's working fine. All right. I'm going to go into the classroom. Okay. How's that? Better? Can you hear me now, everybody? Can you hear me now? Okay. Excellent. Well, while we let everybody come back into the room, I'm going to go through this one more time. I didn't realize that you guys couldn't see or hear, so that's all right. So this is Friday's price action from Friday. I want to bring your attention to this right here. What setup do we have here? What setup is that? That's right. This was the first after we have an initial balance, right? We actually had a couple of PDCs right here that work for small points, but once we broke, right, I want you guys to see the difference, right? Is this acceptance or is this acceptance lower? And let's zoom out a little bit. Is this price discovery or is this price discovery? 1 versus 2. Right? Who thinks for number 1 we had acceptance? Yep. 2 is, this is the difference between acceptance and not having acceptance. Time or distance. This is definitely distance, and we had both, right? This one, you could have gotten a couple of scalps here, but we never really explored price discovery to the downside. Not only that, but we're still in the previous range, aren't we? All right. Only here did we have true price discovery. All right. Not only that, we had a distribution form. We have a composite on the LVN right here. And we had the value area high on this distribution. Not only that, but we had the low. So that could be a back test of that previous support. All right, who took this PDC? It's probably the best, one of the better trades we got the entire session. All right, target the new lows. And ba-boom. Beautiful. It was a beautiful trade. So you would have experienced, if you would have just taken that band, you took about, I don't know, 8 points of heat. And back down to the lows was 78 points. 8, 9 points of heat for a 78-point trade. This is Friday, Bella. This is Friday. This is just the other day. We traded this live on stream. And then here was the Madonna that we took on stream. The Madonna is the first fade value area extreme from the IB low. For this trade, if you would have just longed the IB low, you would have experienced 8.5 points of drawdown. I took mine off at the point of control, and within less than a minute, I had a 45-point winner, guys. 45 points. Couple great, between these two trades, you could have called it a day, even on small size. Just beautiful setups. And what wound up happening is we just built a distribution here until we lost it later in the session. But we built a balance area here for quite some time. Here's our distribution, and we just continue to build it. Right, so a lot of great scalping opportunities. And this is about where we lost it here. You could have had a nice long off the IB low, right to the price wave deviation band and IB mid close to it. Okay. So welcome to the Q&A, guys. Great setups on Friday. Bella had a great question that I want to launch into before I take some other questions. You're welcome to start posting your questions in the chat, and I'll take questions. And if you guys stick around to the end of the session, we'll play a little Price is Right with the opening of the NASDAQ. It's been a wild weekend of news, serious news dropping again over the weekend. So we might have a very volatile and wild opening. once again. So stick around to the end. At 6 p.m., we will do a guess the opening print, and I'll give away a top 1 futures account for anybody who guesses to the closest to that opening print. Okay. So Bella's question. This is right out of module 4 in the course. Bella's question was right here for this setup right here. Bella said, we didn't touch the band. This one didn't touch the band either, Bella, just FYI. Right? If we don't touch the band, how do we enter the trade? Or how do we know? Right? So the trades don't always touch to the tick, right? Oftentimes they overshoot and sometimes they don't make it. They have to be front run. So I talk about the concept of front running trades. Right? That means where we actually start to enter before we even get to the level, anticipating the trade not getting there. Right? I know that's hard, but these trades don't always play out to the tick. It's the concept and the principle that you have to understand, especially with a fade value area extreme. Right? This is a zone. This is not just a line. I want you guys to start thinking away from lines on a fade, right? Because in a distribution, we have a distribution, right? We have a value area high and we have a value area low, right? 68% of our trading takes place in the distribution. However, 15% takes place down here, right? So on a fade value area extreme, we can easily just go to here. We can go down here and reject, and it's still all a fade value area extreme. Right? So how do you enter on a fade? Right? We can tend to layer in with micros. Right? Maybe we get hit with some of them before it reverses. Maybe it hits all of them before it reverses. Right? That tends to be the best tactic. And if you haven't watched my video on execution, I would encourage you to do so. That's also in the course that talks about how you can layer in at a fade value or extreme edge, because price doesn't always come to the level to the tick. Also happens in VWAP bounces quite a bit. Can also happen in price discovery continuation, right? Price doesn't always go to the level perfectly. Sometimes it does go to it. Sometimes it overshoots it, right? It's not perfect. Why do we have textbook examples? Absolutely, right? So what's frustrating, Bella, is that price often enough, and I think a lot of you guys can testify to this, that price will come to our level often enough, almost perfectly, that we almost expect it to happen. And that's not true. You know, maybe 20 to 30% of our setups that actually happens. But a lot of the times it can overshoot before it works. A lot of times it doesn't make it before it works. It starts working before. And why does it start working before it gets there? It's because everybody is looking to short the VWAP, for example. And if everybody's looking to short and people start getting in early, it won't make it there. So I very, very often front run great setups for that reason. Okay, but it was a great question, Bella. Really, really great question. Bella's other question was, with the initial balance, Bella asked, it helps us determine what kind of day it will be. And what do we mean by that? Right? Well, we can tell the volatility, one, by the size of the initial balance, right? And we actually, in our tool, initial balance tool, we have the 20-day IB delta stats, right? So I can see our biggest initial balance was 457 points. I could see our smallest initial balance was 141 points. And I can see our average over the last 4 weeks, 20 trading sessions, was 239 points. Okay, and what's today? 250. So today's initial balance was perfectly average. It's not a big range day. It's not a small range day. It's perfectly average, and a typical size for the initial balance is 250. So we can expect 100-point rotations on a day like today. Okay, now on an average day, right, a true trending session, right, we need to hold and trade under the initial balance high or low. Right, so did we really trend this session? Well, we kind of did. The only problem is it all happened within the first 30 minutes of the day, right? So if, but what happened later, right? So this is our first trend, okay? And then here we go. Let's see what happens next. There we go. We broke the initial balance low. All right, so this is price discovery to the downside in quintessential auction market theory teachings, right? It's not a true price discovery or trending day unless we continue to trade above or below the initial balance, right? It's the initial balance. If we stay between the initial balance the entire session, that was a balanced RTH session, right? We never left the first hour of trading, right? So we created the range in the first hour and we stayed in it the rest of the session, right? So if we're trading above or below the initial balance, that's a pretty good indicator that we might have a trend day on our hands. Okay. Elliot says, "Hey Chris, appreciate you taking the time to do this Q&A. My pleasure. I love doing it, guys. In the live trading room, you mention delta bleeding out and see price coming into an area with heavy delta. Can you please elaborate on what that means and how to potentially trade it?" So when I say delta is bleeding out, that's generally to the downside, and that's where delta is just continuously going down. There's no pullbacks. It's very directional. There's really no trade there. That would just be chasing price, right? If you want to get directional, you got to wait for a pullback and then a continuation play, right? So it is a good sign that there is a trend at hand, but you don't, just because it's bleeding out, you don't want to just short it, right? Because bulls can step in at any time and you can get wicked pretty bad, right? So heavy delta is when you see delta that's large in comparison to the rest. Let me pull up some delta so we can take a look at it. Give me a second. Okay. All right, so this is the delta at the bottom here. This is actually, this is not right. This is what I wanted to select. Wrong one. Okay. All right, so this is what I would consider a bleeding delta. Right? Minor pullbacks, but a whole lot of red. Right? It's pretty directional, lower lows, lower highs. Right? What would I consider a heavy delta? That. Right? Big compared to what? Well, compared to this. Right? Compared to this. Right? It's relative. Right? And where do bulls really step in for the first time? Right there. Right? Right there. Right there. Right there. Right? But there's no continuation on the bulls. Literally, 1 minute of buying and then it died out, right? So let's take a look at more. How about this? Heavy delta? I would think so. This compared to what we saw here in the delta, right? Here compared to here. Lower time frames, Graham. I generally look at the 1 minute for delta. Right? That's generally the only thing I'll use for the 1 minute is when I'm looking at delta. I want to see more details because now I'm looking at order flow, and order flow is the last piece of the puzzle, right? I have my principles, my setups, my trade idea, right? The last piece of the puzzle is going to be order flow, which is where I use tick strike and cumulative delta essentially to help give me context around the trade. So that's generally what I'm looking at. I used to have it more on stream more, but I'm always looking at on this other monitor just gets so packed on one screen. Yep. Gary says it helps to watch ES. Absolutely. Elliot says, is this where volume profile comes into play? Help us in front run knowing it could easily be extreme edge of the profile, expecting it to reject. Yep, absolutely. Well, so on a profile, you have to realize, right, whenever you're fading the edge of a distribution or a high volume node, right, it can always be a little, it's not always to the tick. We tend to have better trades off the deviation, but this tells us where the microstructure is developing, right? Where are we accepting value, right? And where did we leg down into a new value area, right? So I could see we traded here for a while, and then right here, we legged down. And how do we know we legged down? We created a low volume node, right? This is the same concept as a fair value gap, right? Which is kind of comical because this has existed for decades before there was ever such thing as a fair value gap, except we see it in volume. We don't just see it on a candlestick because a fair value gap on a 5 minute is different than that on a 2 minute and a 15 minute or whatever but it doesn't change on the profile. We'll see the same structure regardless of what time frame candlestick we're using, right? So this is way better than a fair value gap. Those value gaps can be actually quite unfair because it doesn't respect the time frame, right? It's different on every time frame. Volume is not, right? Volume is agnostic to the time frame. It will show us that low volume node regardless of what candlestick you're using, what time frame, okay? So we legged down and then we created a new distribution, right? So anyway, when you're longing the bottom of a distribution like you had the opportunity here, sometimes it didn't get there, right? So you have to treat these areas as zones. This was a whole fair zone. You got to give it wider stops, and you got to play that trade. So fades are very common because we spend 80% of our time trading in balance in distributions, and we trade only 20% of the time in price discovery or impulsing from one value area to the next. We spend very little time actually doing that, right? So the fade value or extreme is the most common setup in the entire system. However, one of the drawbacks of the fade value or extreme is that the edges of value aren't perfect price levels. They tend to be zones, right? So you got to learn how to trade the edge of value effectively because it can probe price discovery before it rejects back into value, right? So there's two ways to handle that trade. One is you wait for it to probe and you try to catch it back on the way in. Another is to layer in and try to catch it and have a stop somewhere down here. You can actually give yourself a wider stop because you're getting in lower, right? So you can have your stop down here as opposed to trying to get in here on the rejection. Your stop will actually wind up being higher and closer. Okay. Excellent questions, though. Really, really good questions today. Well, so healthy delta doesn't necessarily, it can confirm price discovery. It doesn't necessarily give me confidence in the pullback. The setup will give me confidence in the pullback. I need a setup. right? I'm not trading the delta, I'm trading the setups. So let's not get it confused. The order flow just provides context and can help with confirmation, right? Will it give me confidence in a pullback? It might, if we're in price discovery and there's lots of selling. But there's things like, market rhythm. I need to pay attention to, how far back will the rotation take us, right? It needs to come back to a proper setup location. So that doesn't change. All right. Charlie, yeah, I do both. I have a volume profile and a VWAP anchored at the beginning of every session. Yes. Guys, just because you don't see it on my screen doesn't mean I'm watching it. If you haven't noticed, I have like 5 other monitors. There's information on these monitors, believe it or not. I'm watching the RTH VWAP. I'm watching the volume profile. I usually have the RTH open right here. Session open. We call it the RTH, Charlie. The regular trading hours open. Because there's a Globex open, Globex session open. So you have to distinguish between the two. There's 2 opens. There's the Globex open and there's the RTH, regular trading hours open. Right? I have one attached to both. Do I have it all on this one screen? No, I do not. But I watch both. Mikey says, if your constraints with your trading plan, this is what Scott says, if your constraints with your trading plan doesn't allow the ability to layer, would you just not take the trade? No, I would just try and get in at the area, right? The best area I see fit, right? IB low or somewhere around the value area high, and you would just have to give it your risk and take the trade. But I would expect to give it more room just in case. I have Globex VWAP on the main screen. That's right, Bella. And I usually have RTH up here on the monitor to my left. That's right. So I would still take the trade, Scott. I'm assuming, if you're trading, if you're the only reason you wouldn't be able to layer in is if you are only trading 1 micro. So then you don't have a choice. You would just take the setup. I would still take the trade, yes. But if you're taking at least at minimum 2 micros, you can layer into a trade. Mikey says, for the break around 1:30 on Friday, what would your take on it be? Would you feel it was probing or building structure to help indicate a big? I mean, I had the narrative for me going into this entire session. Mikey was down. I was looking for a pullback at one point. We did get it here, right to IB mid. And then I thought for sure we were going lower, but at 1:30, right, we broke, and then we back tested. Right, so we broke IB and this composite, and then we back tested. So yeah, that was the short right here, the back test short. That's the pullback, right to the middle band too. So it really never took. I don't think it really ever took the IB low until here. These were all really fast rejections. All of them. That all happened super quick. So unless you were just shorting right into the IB low, you shouldn't have been in that trade. And nobody here should be shorting into the IB low. That is a losing proposition. That is not a high probability setup. In fact, that is a low probability setup. If I told you that the market's going to keep doing what it's doing 80% of the time rather than shift context, and that the fade, especially after it's faded 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times at that point, right? Why would I short that? Right? The high probability setup, especially based on our principles, is to long this every single time until it doesn't work. And then you have a shift in context here. It breaks and it actually holds, right? So we start accepting prices down here, right? You got to be super patient, right? Everybody's looking for everything to happen instantly, right? It happened, right? Now we start building structure. We pull back, we back test, and we go. That was the perfect setup. I think the fact that the lower high, Mikey, is an excellent observance, but until it breaks and holds, we're gonna still anticipate. I think that leans in favor that this level will break, but it can still do this more times than you expect, right? Because this level is weakening, right? The bulls are losing oomph by the sign of that they're not bringing this thing any higher, right? It will crack, but trying to anticipate the crack is going to get you in trouble, right? You kind of let the market show its hand, and it did here, right? Okay, right? Now, where do I get short? Right? It's showing me it's accepting prices down here. This is a much higher confidence short than trying to short any of these breaks. Does that make sense, Mikey? I think that's a fair reason and reasonable expectation that it would stay in this range. It had stayed in it, but it was ready to break now, unless it, it rejected back into it many, many times. Eventually it was ready to go. So you had to be ready for that. Nice. Yeah, trying to catch the market changing as it's changing can be very, very difficult. It's often choppy. It'll often fake you out multiple times before it happens, and that's the lowest probability setup you can take. So if we're looking for high probability setups, generally the fade off the level is going to reward you more than not, right? And then when it doesn't work, okay, now there's a shift in context. Now where do I get short for the continuation and price discovery? But good questions, great questions. Yep, the back test short. It does. The clouds indicator 50 line gives a lot of excellent setups. It sure does. Right? And the times it doesn't, of course it doesn't all the time, but look how many times it interact with it, and it did. Far more times than it didn't. Yeah, it's really good. We do have some questions. So I don't usually stream this over to YouTube. I wanted to do it today, just randomly. I don't know. This is normally reserved for the premium members. There is a delay. We do have some questions over on YouTube, but I want to make sure everybody in the premium group has their questions answered before I take questions from YouTube. So if you guys want to, if you guys have any other questions, now is your shot, guys. I'm happy to answer you guys first. Okay. Okay, Garden asks about the VWAP Wave indicator on my chart. This is the toolkit. This is a paid indicator by Flux Charts, Garden Design Pictures. You can find this at VWAPwave.com/toolkit. That is by Flux Charts. I'll drop the link in the chat. Herm says, what are your thoughts on the 15-minute orb? I don't trade orbs. Nope, not a fan. I don't like orb opening range. I'm not a breakout trader. I don't like breakouts whatsoever. So I stick to our system. I don't think it's in good harmony with how our system trades with price discovery versus balance. I have those setups to focus on and look for. So I think the orb is a waste of time. I think it's way too overly simplified. And I think people online love to sell it as an oversight because it's so simple that people are like, yeah, I can do this. I just set this high and low and trade the breakout, right? I think it's oversimplified. And, I don't see a ton of, we get a lot of traders come over here that are trying to trade orbs very unsuccessfully. So not a fan. And we don't talk about fair value gaps here. We don't use that. That's like an ICT thing. The version we trade here is low volume nodes, right? On the volume profile. It's the same concept, except it's not time frame dependent. Right, Herm? Fair value gaps are based on candlesticks. So it's very different if you're on a 5-minute, a 2-minute, a 1-minute, a 15-minute. You're going to get different fair value gaps because it's based on candlestick charts. We use volume tool volume tools here, right? So a low volume node, which is essentially the same thing as a fair value gap, but it's independent of candlesticks. You'll see the same low volume node at the same price, whether you're on the 5-minute, the 2-minute, the 1-minute, the 15-minute, right? So you don't want your levels to change depending on what time frame you're on. Right? All of our levels of the VWAP wave system, the deviations, the VWAP, the volume profile, initial balance, high, low, extensions, they all stay the same regardless of what time frame you're on. Right? So, Herm, I suggest throwing them out the window because I think you're wasting your time. That's just my opinion. All right, CK Trades, greetings from Israel. Thank you for everything. You have changed my trading forever, and I'm glad I found you because you made me profitable with only the free content. I love to hear that, CK. Do you use volume profile for sessions only, or do you sometimes use it for swings too? So if I'm using it for swings, I'm generally looking at a composite profile, CK. So I'll generally look over the course of multiple days for my swing trades, right? And if we're in a range, right, so I'll take this off. I don't want to see the individuals, and I'll generally draw a composite over the course of many days. And I'll analyze where my value area is, where's the point of control, value area high, value area low, right? Low volume node here, low volume node there, right? This is what I'm using for swing trades. It's a composite volume profile. Bella says, after a Madonna on the one side of IB, can we have a Madonna on the opposite side? It's essentially a fade value or extreme, Bella. It just doesn't have the cute name. So yes, you absolutely can have a fade value or extreme on the other side of the initial balance. Right? So here's our initial balance. Right? If price were to break, right? We had our first Madonna here. If price were to come up and touch this, this would be a fade value area extreme. And we would expect a rejection here. So it's just a core setup. The Madonna is also just a fade value area extreme. It just has a cute name because it's the first time the initial balance is touched. So the answer is yes. Cloud indicator, these are price wave deviations. These are essentially very similar to the deviations on VWAP, but it's based on the price data. It's based on price action. It's not based on the volume. So this is the one tool on the chart that I use that is a little more price action related. Gives a lot of insight based on price action aside from the volume tools, but the same concepts apply. This is essentially our value area that we've created. We generally fade the extremes until it trades within the clouds, and that could be a momentum price discovery move. Okay, John, if you have issues, please contact me offline. Just message me. I'll try to help you. You can message me on the WAP, not on Discord. Do the support on WAP. That's where the indicator lives. Steve, I see sometimes you're a shorter scalp mode, like go for 5 pointers. In which situations do you go for those? Generally, if we're in balance, If we're in a tight distribution, I generally take a lot of trades. 5 points is even small for me. I generally try to get 10 points, but I'll do 5 if it's just not giving me the impulse move. I'm usually scalping on the DOM, right? I'm not trading. I never trade on the charts, guys. I just do my charting here. I'm interested in my price levels and zones here, but I trade on the depth of market display. I do not trade on a chart. I haven't traded on a chart in years. I get way better executions. I'm way faster and much more effective for my trading on the DOM than I am on a chart. And I'd encourage anybody who's trying to up their trading to move over to the DOM and stop trading on the chart. Okay, Elliot says the difference between the momentum RSI and the momentum regime. So they're similar in terms of the math, Elliot. The momentum regime, and I just did a class on this. I don't know if you watched the coaching from Thursday. Did you, Elliot? All right, this is designed to mimic momentum, right? So if we're above here, we're looking for long in the red or orange. That's price discovery short. Anything in between could be balance and no momentum. All right, so this is just trying to see extensions and continuing momentum moves on the price action. I encourage you to watch that coaching class. I'm going to put it in the chat here for you. That's going to give you a much deeper understanding. So that was group coaching here. There you go, Elliot. Make sure you save that, watch that. Yeah, John, make sure you follow all the steps. If you go into, let me post that here for you, John. There's steps on the RSI. It's the same steps for all of them. Make sure you follow all these instructions. Follow those instructions in there, John, and then get in touch with me if it doesn't work. There's also the Start Here video that walks you through the entire process. Okay, lots of good questions, guys. So we're coming in here. We're going to do a couple, about 5-7 minutes more questions here. Casey says, what is that thin line that price rejected off of at 2 p.m.? So 2 p.m. This is the middle line. This is a composite low volume node, Casey. So we have a composite built over multiple days on the volume profile. This is a low volume node. It was also a low volume node on the developing profile as well. So better than your fair value gap. Okay. Hi, Chris. During your live trading, you have a black panel on the left side. Oh, that's tick strike. So that is the buying and selling pressure on the tape. It's visual, and then more importantly, it's audible. You can get a free week trial with tick strike at that link. So check it out. Now, guys, I do have I'm doing a webinar on Thursday. I'm going to try and pack a lot into that. We're going to do a psychology piece. I'm going to do a masterclass on execution, which I'm looking forward to doing with everybody. And then we're going to do a prop firm funded trader section. So there's going to be 3 major sections to that class. So I'm looking forward to doing that. If you haven't registered for that, you can do that here. I'm going to drop the link. If you can't make it, just make sure you still register because we'll send out a recording. JP said, sorry if the question should repeat, just came back. Any update on the new book? Yeah. So the book is like just about done. It's with the layout guy. He's taken way longer than I expected him to. It's been with him for over 2 weeks, 3 weeks actually. He did my first book and he turned around the first book in like a week and a half. So I expected that to be just as fast. Not so this time. He's probably just really busy. So he's been taking a lot longer. We're right there. So I'm hoping in the next week or so, JP. I really, really am. I was really hoping to get it released in March. Lightly salted, struggling a bit with over trading. I know you have videos on it, but been struggling with identifying fake outs and also setting my stops. I am getting payouts, but then blowing them due to over trading. Well, I suggest you waiting for just setups, right? It's hard to give you advice without actually knowing the specifics of what you're doing. Over trading can take many very different forms. I know you're trying to explain it. But my suggestion is journaling your trades and getting really specific with what is, what do you mean? What is the definition of you over trading? Are you taking trades that are not setups? Are you just taking impulsive trades? Are you getting into the same trade multiple times? Are you getting stopped out and taking it again? Are you flipping your bias quickly, going the opposite direction? Proteria says delta and volume profile are more accurate in trade of 8. Absolutely. I don't really use the trade on delta on trade of 8 is very useful. I don't use delta whatsoever on TradingView. The volume profile on TradingView isn't bad, believe it or not. I do always have one up on NinjaTrader to my left to double check it because that's tick data. So I am always referencing my TradingView versus the tick chart version on NinjaTrader. It's always usually very similar. The structure is almost always the same. So the low volume nodes and the high volume nodes are generally in the same area. The only thing that might change is the point of controls. So I'm always kind of double checking against NinjaTrader. And I don't use footprint charts. I do not. The initial balance indicator is the VWAP initial balance wave map is the initial balance indicator. Initial balance wave map. How do I treat the IB? It's always the IB. So you're just going to have the same levels. It's always valid until there's a new initial balance. Correct, CK. So I trade Asia. You'll see me trade it on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. So if you want to hop onto that stream, I start at 7 on Tuesday and Wednesday for the Asia stream. And I am just using the prior initial balance. Those levels are valid until we have a new initial balance the next day. So we'll continue to use those levels. Lightly salted. I'm seeing the one of the key setups, but might be entering too early and getting faked out. Okay. I generally, in a lot of good trades, I just take the trades. I don't, I do front run quite a bit. So, that might not only be, maybe your stops are too tight. You're getting stopped out too easily. You're not letting the trades work. That sounds like it could possibly be. And journaling is everything, guys. There's actually a really interesting discussion going on social media right now. There's a fair group of traders that say journaling is a waste of time. And I can't even believe it. I think they're like trying to separate themselves in some weird way. I think it's complete BS, and I think it's toxic and not doing traders a service to say that nonsense, right? Imagine trying to run a business. I mean, essentially you're running a trading business, right? Right? Don't you want to know what's working, right? All you know is that you're making money or losing in your business, right? Wouldn't you want to know where that money's coming from? Wouldn't you want to know the P&L or the margins of the products you're selling, your inventory, the timesheets of your employees, where are they spending their most time, what is being the most efficient, right? That's all the information necessary to run your business at the end of the day. I know it's crazy, Charlie. Absolutely crazy. Yep. That's how I compare it, right? Everything about your trading, your journaling is your business records. It's your accounting. It's how you optimize your business. Don't you want to know what's performing best in your business? You're never going to be able to do it by memory. I mean, that's going to be impossible. I mean, can you tell me how you traded last 2 Mondays ago? Of course not. Yep. That's right, Angie. You have us to hold you accountable though, Angie. All right. Guys, we are going to play a little game. All right, we're going to play The Price is Right on NQ. Okay, so this is the way it's going to work. NQ is going to be opening in 6 minutes. 6 minutes. Okay. You're going to guess the opening print of NQ to the nearest tick. You can go above, you can go below. All right. Once you guess your price, you cannot guess again. I can't see an edited next to your number. If there's an edit next to it, you're disqualified. Okay. So once you put in your number, that's that. Okay. You can't put in 2 numbers. If you do want to put in 2 numbers, okay, you have to delete your previous one. Okay. You're only allowed to have 1. All right. No editing allowed. Whoever's closest to the opening print of NQ is going to win a top 1 futures account. Okay. I'm going to close the doors in 4 minutes. All right. So at 5:59 on the dot, there will be no more entries. All right. So you have 4 minutes to think about what price you want to put in. Now, if there's 2 matching prices, whoever put it in first is going to win. Okay. So there's no ties. Whoever put it in first wins. All right. Excellent. So there has been a lot of crazy news over the weekend. I saw some stuff on social media about a lot of missiles getting through to Israel. Did you guys see that? Was that fake? Was that real? Because I don't even know anymore. That the Iron Dome was failing. Oh, crazy. It's really sad that I see stuff like that and I have to question it, right? Like I don't even know if it's real or not. I don't know if it's AI or just some nonsense. Yeah. We did have somebody who's in Israel. I think CK said he was in Israel. Hope everybody is staying safe as best as they can. It's crazy times. Oh man. I'm sorry to hear that, CK. Well, I hope you stay safe. These are crazy times we're living in right now. So there's that. Trump gave Iran 48 hours to open the Strait of Hormuz. Otherwise, they were going to start striking their power plants. So that's also very serious news. On Friday, he was talking about winding down the war. And then this weekend, that tone had changed drastically. So we're kind of on a merry-go-round roller coaster with news as it relates to this war. Not all that dissimilar to what we experienced with the tariffs. So all politics aside, it does create for a very volatile market, which is not the worst thing in the world for day traders. All right, guys, 90 seconds to put your scores in. Whoever is the closest, I'm going to guess, let's see. What is my guess? I'm going to say, geez, what am I going to say? I'm going to say 928 and a half. 23, 928 and a half. That's mine. All right, guys, 30 seconds. Oh, shoot, you're right. Okay. I'm going to go from 4 o'clock. Mm, 9:49. All right, time's up. All right, guys, here we go. Let's see what we get. $30 seconds. I'm probably not going to guess again, but if I did have to guess, I'm thinking 905. 940. Ooh, 900. What was it? We opened at 902. 23,902. All right, who's the closest? Opening price is 23,902. I was pretty close. I was 26 points away. After that, I said 905. Yeah. Pretty wild, right, Logger? All right, 902. Oh, I did say 902, didn't I? Okay, 902. We got Ryan at 888. Oh, Ryan, you put it in after no more entries. 902, 902. Oh, am I winning again? Jeffrey. Jeffrey looks pretty close. 15, 17 points. I think it's Jeffrey. All right, so Ryan, it looks like you were the closest, but the cutoff was at 59. All right, so I put in no more entries, and then you put it in. So the rule was it had to be in by at the 59 minute. So based on that rule, and I hate to do that, but it was part of the rules. Everybody had to get it in by a certain time. It looks like Jeffrey's the winner. Am I wrong? Does anybody want to argue with that? Jeffrey had 885 and 3/4. He wins a barrel of crude. All right. You guys are funny. 882, 886. Smart Crashers is 886. Oh, wait, hold on, Jeffrey. What were you? Jeffrey was. I do use CVD. It's not on this monitor, CK. It's over to the one of the monitors to my left. There's a lot of numbers here. I'm like going cross-eyed trying to go through all of them here. Let me try this one more time. Jeffrey. Smart Crashers is 886. Yeah, sorry, Jeffrey. Smart Crashers actually won. I missed him. Sorry to get you excited too earlier. Smart Crasher won. He beat you by a point. Congratulations, Smart Crasher. You are the winner. Just message me here on Discord and we'll get you all settled with that. Maybe next week. We'll do it again next Sunday. Guys, thank you for joining me. I'm going to go have some dinner. I'm not going to trade this. Every time this happens, we seem to grind up after that happens. So, I don't know if I want long here. I just not a fan of this. So I'm going to sit to the side. Let's see how the price action pans out overnight. If you guys are going to continue trading, you can head on over to the voice channels, watch the market. If you guys are going to be trading, you can share your screens, share your mics. Here's a link to that. If you just want to monitor and get setups, there's a room for you guys to go. I encourage you to go there. Otherwise, I want you to manage your risk, stay sharp. We're going to be live tomorrow morning at 9:30 for the New York Open, and we'll be trading this, and we'll see how it goes this week. All right, have a wonderful evening, guys, and we will see you tomorrow morning. Also, Chuck tomorrow night has a class at 7 p.m. for anybody that can join that one. Success with VWAP Wave. And if you guys haven't registered for the webinar yet, make sure you get into that. That's in the link in the chat. All right, guys, have a wonderful day. Manage your risk, stay sharp, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.